Exciting. So hi everyone, nice to meet you. My name's Dan. I'm one of our uh, panelists today talking about how to college first gen. We are just going to give it another minute to make sure that everyone can join. If you'd like, you can rename yourself to include information about where you work, um, what like organization you're affiliated with. And also if you want to put in the chat to all panelists and attendees, you can mention like what city and state you're coming from, just so we all know where everyone's coming from today.
All right, and we'll give it about 30 more seconds and then we will get started. Thanks everyone for being here today.
You have someone from Coffeyville. That's a fun name for a place. All right, Cody, I think we can get started.
Perfect. All right, well, welcome everyone to today's session for the SACAT conference, To Through and Beyond College First Gen Lessons. My name is Cody Dailey, and with me is
Daniel Gonzalez, and I'm also a co-host and CFO for How to College First Gen.
Absolutely. So we're here today to talk about a wide variety of topics relating to first generation college students. We are, of course, with the How to College First Gen podcast, which will talk about our work and how we do our work to best serve the first generation students out there and the first generation community as a whole. Just a couple of housekeeping items before we get started. As you know, this is a webinar style broadcast, so we cannot see or hear you. However, we do hope that this is a very collaborative and engaging session today. And you can collaborate and engage in a couple of ways. One, if you have questions throughout the presentation, you can throw those in the Q&A. And then if you have any thoughts, ideas, topics you want to share, you can do that in the chat. I know a lot of people are putting where they're coming from today in the chat, which is awesome. So we will use the chat a couple times today for you all to engage with us and to share your ideas with us as well.
Yeah, and we'd also love to have you briefly fill out this quick survey just to like let us know where everyone's coming from. I just pasted it in the chat. I can paste it again. Okay, Cody, I think you need to switch it to all 10. There we go. Yeah, so me and Cody just shared the link. If you want to take a few moments to do that while Cody goes over the agenda, that'd be great. Thank you.
All right, so we'll give you guys about 30 seconds to a minute to do that, and then we'll go over the agenda. Posted that in the chat again in case anyone just joined us. We're just filling out a quick survey from who's here today. Okay, so we are going to go ahead and get started. If you're still filling out the survey, no worries. There's still time to do that, so keep working at that. But we're going to go ahead and go over the agenda for today's session. So today we're going to talk about our connection to the first generation community. That is kind of the purpose why we also created the survey for you all. We want to see who's in the room and your connection to the first generation community. Obviously, if you're here today, you're probably interested in learning more, or you're connected to this community in some way or another. So we're excited to see that in the survey results and to share our stories with you. We will also talk about some issues that first generation students face in a wide variety of areas. We will also then talk about our podcast mission, which is to democratize information for first gen students and families. So really getting that information out to them. We will then talk about how we do it in a unique way. So we share information via narratives. So as a podcast, we host a lot of different guests, and we'll talk about how we do that and how we disseminate that information. And then we'll even share some case studies, so some live links that we have to share with you of past guests and kind of how they have shared their stories. And then at the very end, we would love to have a really robust conversation about your takeaways from today and how you can apply our product, the podcast, to your daily practice and the work that you do with students. Okay. But that is kind of an overview of what we will talk about in our session today. So like I said, we will get started with the connection to the first generation community. So I will go ahead and get started and introduce myself. So as I mentioned, my name is Cody Dailey. I'm one of the co-hosts, and I also work with partnerships and content for the podcast. I am a first generation college student. I'm from Galesburg, Illinois, which is West Central Illinois. If you know where that is, that's awesome. So, but I now live in Chicago. I'm a post-secondary high school counselor at a high school in the south suburbs of Chicago. And the work that I do every day is truly my passion. As I mentioned, was a first generation college student from a single parent household, from a low income household. My mom always had the expectation of college. I was the type of student who was scared to bring home an A minus. We like to get straight A's, but we never knew how college would be actually feasible. We always had that goal as a family, my sister and I, going to college, but we didn't realistically know how it would happen. I was fortunate enough in the 8th grade, if you can believe that, to earn a scholarship in my local community that helped pay for 2 years at my local community college and 2 years at my local 4-year liberal arts college, which was Knox College. Without that program, financially, but also in terms of support, I don't know where I would be today. And so I work with a lot of first generation students right now on the high school level, and I see so much of myself in them, and try to best support them in all the different ways. So as I mentioned, I have a degree from Knox College, a bachelor's in international relations. I then attended DePaul University for school counseling, and I'm, like I said, now a counselor. So that's kind of a brief introduction into my first generation story. And now I'll pass it over to Dan.
Thank you, Cody, and thank you for sharing your story, and congrats again on all that you've accomplished. It's super great to get to work with you. So hi everyone, my name is Dan. I was also first in my family to go to college, and I also came from a low-income background. I identify as Puerto Rican, Afro-Latinx, if you will. And currently, I went to high school in Cleveland, Ohio. I now work for Minds Matter New York City, which is a college access and success program that works with low-income, high-achieving students to get them to and through college. I was also a participant in the Minds Matter Cleveland chapter back when I was in high school, so I got to come back and pay it forward. It's been really rewarding. I went to the University of Pennsylvania and I majored in health and societies with a concentration in public health and a minor in fine arts. And throughout my high school and college experience, I've always been very aware of the challenges that we face in our education system, and always trying to do what I can to help lift up my peers with me, which has led me to become a peer counselor when I was in college, and then also to become a program assistant for a success program at Penn, and then also now in my current role to continue to work and support high school and college students who are first gen and or low income. And as we mentioned before, I work with the podcast, How to College First Gen. I joined back in October, and I am our CFO. I also help with partnerships, and I also produce episodes. So feel free to check those out. With that, I'll stop there and pass it back to Cody. Thank you all.
Awesome. Thank you, Dan, for sharing that. We're now going to go on to the next section, which is, common issues that first generation students face. And Dan and I, obviously, as first generation students, have faced some of these challenges ourselves. So, just to kind of briefly go over these, we know some of you are well aware of some of these areas, but here are some of the most common issues that first gen students face. First, the lack of knowledge about the process. It's funny with the college process overall, I think it's constantly changing. So even for students whose families did go to college, sometimes it can be kind of a new process, but especially for first gen students, it can oftentimes seem like almost another language to them, right? So kind of overwhelming, something they don't necessarily understand. Also, sometimes first generation students have limited career aspirations or planning. Many first generation students, when they think about careers, middle school, high school, they tend to think about careers in their family. Okay. But just because mom works in the medical field doesn't mean you need to work in the medical field. So sometimes those first gen students don't do some of that planning or don't even know what opportunities are out there waiting for them. Also, many first generation students identify as low income as well. So having the financial means to go to college or even college financial planning, different programs there. Um, Also, because the parents did not go to college, there is sometimes a lack of parent engagement, participation, or support. So, we've interviewed guests before who have said, my parents weren't very active in it because they were almost embarrassed that they didn't know things. So sometimes there's that. Sometimes if you're the first to go into college in your family, maybe your family isn't supportive of that pathway. I've encountered students and guests who have had that. So um, that's super important to point out as well. And we've done episodes and we'll talk about this, but engaging the parents, we really want to also speak to those parents and help them as well. Also, a lack of confidence. Am I right for college? Am I supposed to go to college? Is it the place for me? A lot of first gen students, especially that first year, might encounter some of those thoughts. There's also, isolation, increased stress and pressure among first generation students. We are oftentimes wanting to do things on behalf of our whole family. So it's not even we're going to college because we want to get a degree. We are going to college because we want to, lift our family from poverty or do better educationally than our predecessors. So that's huge pressures, especially for students who are 17, 18, 19 years old. And then also navigating the college system. So I tell my students all the time that I work with, it's not just about getting you into college, it's about you succeeding in college. And so do they have the resources on campus? Do they know where to go to get the resources on campus? Sometimes navigating that system can be challenging, especially for those first gen students. Dan, would you like to highlight any of these that pertain to you specifically or that you maybe experienced?
Yeah, no, I definitely want to just continue to add to your point that the issues that first gen students face are not just at one stage of their life. It has a journey. So from in high school, even before high school to college and then after college, there are going to be new challenges first gen students will face. And I think it's really important that we get to talk about those. One issue that I was aware of, but like got more of the language to talk about in my role is this concept of like career undermatching, where you might have a student who majored in STEM, but now has an administrative office job where they could have been an engineer, but there wasn't the connect of the resources to get them from their engineering degree to an engineering job. So that's like a really interesting problem that I've been more aware of in my work with supporting college students is like bridging that gap in the career planning for them. But yeah, I think that's the only thing I wanted to add. I also related to a lot of these things, and I think if it wasn't for programs that I was a part of at my institution or for my mentors, I'm not sure if I would have gotten as far as I have. So I'm just really grateful for any and all the resources that have existed for me. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And that mentorship piece is something that's huge. We talk about that a lot in our podcast, regardless of the topic that we're covering. I think it always comes back to mentorships and people that you can go to. So absolutely. So in terms of the issues that first gen students face, our next question is then, how do we help them? How do we get the information to them? How do we support them? So through our podcast, we provide episodes in the narrative style, which Dan will talk about in a second. But we provide episodes on a wide variety of topics to help reach and support those students. So our podcast, we have 44 episodes, so we're almost at our 50 mark, which is awesome. Our podcast started in August of 2020, so we are still a relatively new group, but we've got a lot of great information out there. And, we really divide our podcast into kind of topic-based subjects. So we've done episodes on the college process. We did an episode on college in the time of COVID, how that was changing. We've done episodes on financing college. I did a FAFSA episode back in December. We also do the social capital episodes about mentors, as we already alluded to, parent support. So we do want to include the parents in this too. We've done a couple of parent episodes available in both English and Spanish. And also academics. One example is the Seeking Academic Help episode, which hit home for me. I was a kid who high school was pretty easy for me, not gonna lie. And I didn't really know how to self-advocate and how to ask questions. I always thought that like, oh, would people think I'm not smart, or would I not feel like I belong? But that was something I had to really overcome in college as a first gen student. And then we also do episodes on well-being. We've done a couple episodes on imposter syndrome, which is a very common thing that a lot of first gen students face. But yeah, this is just kind of a brief overview of the different areas we cover. We've also done some special episodes. We've done episodes on DACA and undocumented students. We've done episodes on fellowships at Harvard. We actually just released our first live podcast, which was a career panel hosted by the First Fellows program at the University of Alabama. So we really cover a lot of different topics, but it's all about, what do first gen students need most, and what episodes can we create and curate to get that info to them. So, all right. And then Dan will talk about how we do it. So I talked about some of the subjects we cover, but he'll talk about how we do it within our episodes.
Bear with me. I think I might be having some technical difficulties. Can you hear me still, Cody?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, I think my screen's just bugging out, but let me 1 second. Just take a step back, minimize. Okay, yeah, so I think this is working now. So Cody mentioned some of our episodes and like how they go, and he talked about like how we use a narrative format. So I'm here to just briefly explain like why do we focus on narratives. So the first points we wanted to mention is going into this work, we had to make a decision about what we were going to focus on. There are numerous groups that are doing work, whether you're a high school counselor, a community-based organization, a foundation, a digital platform. There's a lot of different mediums out there producing content for first gens. Maybe not as much as like we would have expected. It's still emerging, but we're getting there. And one of the main things I wanted to share was that we all noticed that there seems to be a lot of content. There might not be some of that like actual how-to with like insight from people directly. So there's this piece that we really just want to hear like more personal stories, like, okay, did this tip actually help you? So that's why our podcast really focuses on the narratives and showing that arc over time. So like, how can a topic from high school evolve throughout college and beyond? And all of our guests are first gen from all over the country. I think in some cases we've even interviewed people out of the country, but we really just try to highlight the diversity of the first gen experience Another piece to note is that like reading content, the first gen narrative it can be kind of ambiguous. Like, if you're reading a document, like, is this really for me? So just to make our audience feel seen, we do try to invite them to become guests and really just highlight that like authentic advice. Like this is like a real person's story and how they navigated something. I know me and Cody and all of our co-hosts can personally relate to having received advice from a mentor or for someone who had just done what we did and like connected to that like way more than just reading a simple fact sheet. Because sometimes fact sheets are kind of broad strokes to all the nuances that come with being first gen. So below you'll notice this little flow chart I've made, and it just shows like, what are some examples of questions that we would ask our guests. So if you're in high school, like maybe a question we'd ask is like, what are your hopes and dreams about attending college? Or about, getting a career using your college degree? Or for our college students, like, what is it like to navigate being at home and, or like navigate the world between going home and being in college campuses? Like, are there differences that come up? How do you navigate that? And then for post-college, like what lessons have you learned looking back on your journey? What are new challenges that are coming up, the new lessons you're learning? Um, so that's what we find the narrative piece to be really beautiful. In terms of the landscape, there aren't too many podcasts out there currently highlighting the experiences of first gens. I know there's the First Gen Lounge, which is also another great resource to share. Um, I think QuestBridge started this podcast called The Quest Continues. So it's exciting to see some more orgs start to do this work. But we are like really paving the way in this new space. So that's what I wanted to briefly share here. But Cody, feel free to add any other points you want to include.
Yeah, and I would just reiterate something we've already mentioned a couple times. I think that um, another reason that is really a point to focus on in terms of why we do the narratives is you've heard us say a couple times already that we also want to build a community. So oftentimes, as I mentioned, first generation students feel that they're alone or that it's only them or they're isolated in this process. But we find that with our podcast, the fact that we can have a high school student who's about to enter this journey, a college student who's currently going through it, and a post-college who went through it, all come together and share their stories, makes them all feel a part of it together and cohesive as a group. So we'll mention that a couple times throughout, but I think that's another strength of our product as well. So.
Yeah, thank you, Cody.
Yeah.
So now we want to do a brief case study on on one episode that we've done in particular. I'm just quickly getting my notes organized so I don't mess up anything. But yeah, so we're gonna briefly take time to share 3 clips from one of our episodes. It was our very first episode actually, called Why College, where Norma interviews 3 first-gen college students about their experiences. So in the first guest, we have Leslie, who's a high school student from Houston, and she talks about why she wants to go to college to become a nurse one day. And then we have Chris, who started his journey at Rice University and really shares the lessons he's learned from really identifying like what is his purpose for going to college and how he became motivated to become a doctor. And then lastly, we have Nadine, who went to community college, but then transferred to the University of Houston, where she decided that she's going to use her college degree to like help her find her passion and give back to her community. So we wanted to briefly share these 3 clips with you just to give you a taste of like what listening to our podcast is like. So I'm going to let Cody share the first clip with Leslie.
Well, for me, since I didn't really have much guidance, I did a lot of research on my own, seeing scholarships, grants, financial aid, FAFSA from the government that they could give you money, especially considering that I'm a first generation student. And for me, I saw that support being a first generation student because they want you to go ahead and get that career. They want you to get that job. They want you to move forward with whatever you want to pursue in your future. So for me, it was mostly just doing my research.
And what about this part of the leap of faith? How do you know that at the end of it, it's going to work out for you, that you're actually going to be able to graduate and hold that diploma in your hand?
I guess for me, it's motivation from my family and having that support behind me at all times, knowing that also not the only one who thinks this way, but I'm doing it for them to see me succeed. They gave me this idea of, if you study, you will get far in life and you will have many opportunities open for you and many doors open for you. So having that mentality also and that leap of faith being my family being behind me to support me.
So when you talk about doors that are opening up for you, what kind of doors do you think college will be able to open up?
For me, it will probably be just as a stepping stone in my path and my career that I want to pursue is nursing school. And even after nursing school, it would be job opportunities and being able to go to hospitals and working in hospitals or in clinics so I can practice my career.
And why did you decide that nursing was the way to go? How did you land on that major?
Well, in my family, my aunt from Mexico, she is a nurse, and she would tell me all these amazing stories about how her and her team would be able to save lives and give people like hope in the hospitals after being with sickness. People get really down and really sad, but being able to be there for them, especially as a nurse, you get to spend more time with them and have kind of a connection with the patient and being able to see them grow in faith and in hope that they will get better.
That's beautiful. So you are hoping that your career will not only obviously help you financially, but that you're also going to make a positive impact in the world, especially for people who might be suffering due to different illness.
Yes, exactly.
And I'll just comment quickly on Leslie's portion. So obviously for her Y college was really focused on career. She was really connected to her career goal of being a nurse and going into the medical profession. Her family was encouraging. You heard a lot about that and how she actually felt a lot of support and motivation to do it. Because she was first gen, she really found power in that. So she was from the high school perspective. So, but now I'll go into Chris, which will provide the college perspective.
Specifically for me, I did go into college assuming maybe I want a career in research. I've always wanted to be a scientist. The more I learned about it, though, I realized maybe science and research and working in a lab isn't for me. There was a time when I realized, oh no, what am I doing with my life? Why am I working towards this degree? What am I going to do? Eventually, I started researching more. I started doing a lot of self-reflection, and I realized, well, I like the idea of knowing things. I like being informed, but I also like helping people. And for me, that combination of liking science specifically and wanting to help people, and of course, there's a lot of other variables that went into this decision, but it kind of led for me to think I need to study the most that I can to be able to help people in the future as a doctor, because that's where I want to go in my career right now. Those are my career goals as of right now. So whenever I'm in a classroom and I'm thinking, why are there so many numbers on this page? I don't even know what this equation means. I remember to myself, Chris, just take a step back and realize all of this hard work is for a reason. You want to become more informed. You want to train your brain. That's really what it is. Learning is being able to train your brain and having the capacity to learn. And I think that sets you up not just in medicine to be a doctor, but really for anything in your life is the ability to learn. That's something that you'll carry with you in any career that you'll have. And that's what I think of whenever I'm struggling in school and I tell myself, just hang in there.
Yeah, so, the one quick thing I wanted to say about Chris is that he definitely had a journey of not necessarily even knowing why he wanted to go to college. Something that happens is that you just get caught up in like, well, everyone's doing it, so I guess I should. So, Chris really shared with Norman another clip about like how it took him time to realize, like, wait, why am I doing this? And like, what's like my own reason. So I think it was really great to hear like that evolution of thought for him and how he made his journey his own. And Molly says such wise words. Yeah, thank you. It's so interesting to hear what our guests have to say. They're very wise. And now we'll have our last clip with Nadine. Yeah, thank you, Cody.
I think you talked about that just now. The importance of building relationships. I mean, that takes you a long way. Learning how to network, building those soft skills. And again, yes, you're in college, you're being taught by great professors, and you pay a lot of money for textbooks that you get to learn from. But establishing relationships, going to those networking events, I don't know that I would have been able to land my first internship if I didn't put myself out there. And it's uncomfortable. There's a phrase that I'm probably going to misquote, but it's growth and comfort do not coexist. And so, in fact, from the CEO who I worked for, my first big girl job, I guess you could say. And so it's invaluable. Establishing relationships and knowing people that are going to get you in the door is really, a textbook is not going to do that for you. Yeah, your college degree will eventually, but in my perspective, it makes it a lot easier to be seen and put yourself out there.
So, quick word I want to say about Nadine is that I think she's really hitting home on this piece that sometimes first-gen students overlook, and it's this idea of like the importance of networking and how to step into their career development, because like she said, that's like the unwritten curriculum of going to college. It's like you don't just go to college to take classes, you go to colleges for tons of things, and one of them is to build very strong relationships to help you in the future. So I really hope that students took away that like takeaway. That was redundant. To like also remember it's not just what you do in the classroom to be successful. But I think I want to transition to our takeaways, and we're coming towards the end of our time with you all. So the first thing I'd really love is if everyone could just take a moment, and if you're on your computer, if you could just go and follow us on LinkedIn. Just take like that 30 seconds to like look us up, How to College First Gen, and just add us on LinkedIn. We'd love to connect with you in the future and answer any questions you have. So this is just a real simple way to make sure that we keep in touch. And 1 second, let me put that link. I sent it to Cody, not to you all. So that's the link there. It just prompts you to go on to LinkedIn. You can also take other steps, but before we get there, if you've taken a moment to add us on LinkedIn, I wanted you all to brainstorm for 1 minute. What are some ways you can think of using our podcast to help the students you work with, or if you are a student, like to share it with other students? So just take a minute. I want everyone to wait at least 1 minute before they put their piece in the chat, and make sure that when you do send it, that you send it to all panelists and attendees. So if you click your chat, you'll notice you can send it to panelists, or you can send it to everyone. Send it to everyone if everyone wants to see and get ideas from you. So feel free to take another 30 seconds to just think through some of those ideas. And then if you get stuck, Cody can share some ideas that we have. But yeah, I'm going to give it another 10 seconds. Yep. So everyone feel free, if you already have something typed, just feel free to shoot, press send, get this like waterfall effect of just all these great ideas from our attendees. And we can also share more of the things that we've done in the past. Cody, feel free to, if you want to click on the slide, you can share some more stuff.
Yeah. So as you guys are throwing some ideas in the chat, which you can do at this point now, about ways that you feel like you could use the podcast with your students or in your communities that you work in, here are some ways, and I'll let Dan kind of talk about some ideas for how you could use our podcast to best support your students.
So some of the ways that were shared on the screen, posting to the school's website. If you work with a high school or work with a university that has a research page, or even if you work at a nonprofit that has like a web portal, it's always great to just share another resource for everyone to take a look at. So, feel free to promote us on any of your platforms that you utilize. Also sharing with families. We mentioned before that some of our episodes are targeted towards parents in English and Spanish. So that's just like another opportunity to hear from parents about how they've navigated supporting their student who's first gen, and then also to hear more from our students in case, like, maybe you have a parent who hasn't gotten to ask their kid that question. Also integrating some ideas in your curriculum. Like we mentioned that there's podcasts that have episodes with the narratives from high school, college, post-college. So whoever you're serving, you can like pick that snippet and just share that and like have a discussion about it. Creating discussion groups, like how can we use like a topic that we've covered to advance a conversation that you're having on your campus or at your high school or in your nonprofit. And also, in general, if you utilize social media to post content on any resources, feel free to tag us so we could reshare it and share it with our audience. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. So we try to reach anyone and everyone that we can. Yeah, so I'm just going to take a moment to read some of the stuff in the chat. Like one about like Spanish language podcast for sure would be useful. Yep, that's super important to make information accessible to our parents in all the languages they speak. So that's something that we care about and like is in our plan to like eventually branch out and do more. A lot of our team, we have, I think 2 of our members speak Spanish, so that's awesome. And then also we have a co-host member who's Korean, so that's also awesome to know. Yeah, so Cody, I'm just gonna take another moment to look at the chat, but if you want, you can briefly talk about other ways to connect with the podcast and our audience and the attendees.
Yeah, absolutely. So I pulled up this slide, which is kind of a all the info slide, but feel free to take a look. In the middle there, we have our website, which is howtocollegefirstgen.org. We can post that again in the chat. I know I threw it in earlier. If you would like, you can also scan the QR code. That will take you to a nice one-pager. So if you're wanting to, disseminate information on paper to families or at different events at your colleges or high schools or universities, you can download that one-pager and use it as kind of a reference for our podcast. As Dan mentioned earlier, our podcast is available on several platforms, including Google Podcasts, Anchor, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. So feel free to give us a follow, and we would love any thoughts that you have. So if you want to leave us reviews or comments on future episodes, you guys are all at the forefront of working with the students. So we want to make sure that we're making content relating to the needs of the students on your campuses. So, in the top right there's several different ways to get involved. You can subscribe to our newsletter, which is on our homepage. We also have internships available for both high school and college students. So we are a team of 5, but we're really a team of like 13, I think 12 or 13, because we have editing interns, we have marketing interns, we have strategic development interns, and they're all first generation students getting experience on our podcast. Several of them have also been guests on our podcast, which is a cool opportunity too. So if there are students that that are looking for internships, we're going to be opening some internship applications soon. So you can always stay up to date on our website for future internship opportunities too. You can also be a guest on our podcast. So we're always looking for high school students, college students, professionals, all who were first gen to be on our podcast. And then you can also donate. We are in the process of seeking the nonprofit status, but you can always donate as well to our podcast. So, and then, in terms of partnerships there to the bottom left, we've done a lot of partnerships so far this year. I've mentioned a couple. We did a podcast with the Harvard Kennedy School and their U.S. Latinx Fellowship and their Fellowship for Serving African American Communities. We did 2 episodes with Harvard. We've done a couple events with the University of Alabama, which have been super successful. So if there's any way we can get involved or support your groups on your campus, definitely contact Dan or myself. You can also just contact our general contact through How to College, but we're always here to help support you. And then, as Dan mentioned, we're on all forms of social media. So follow us on your most preferred social media: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Feel free to use your phone for that. And then lastly, here's our team in the middle. These are our 5 co-hosts. Again, we have several interns, but we have Luz Rocha, who's one of our co-hosts. She's an environmental engineer and lives and works in Houston, Texas. We have Mi-Jin Han, who is, as Dan said, a first generation and also an international student from South Korea. We also have Norma Torres Mendoza, who is one of our co-hosts as well, and then of course Dan and myself. But that, I think, is just kind of a brief overview. Dan, if I missed anything, let me know. But
you did great. You did a great job.
Sorry
Thank you so much.
fast.
Yeah, but so for everything that Cody said, we really would just love to continue to build that community and connect with you all. So please feel free to shoot us an email at howtocollegefirstgen@gmail.com, or go to our website and use the contact us feature. Any way we can connect, we would love to. So thank you all for your time. And we do have, I think, 4 more minutes, but
any questions?
You all. Yeah, feel free to ask questions using the Q&A, or just directly message them in the chat and we'll try to get to them.
And Dan, were there any questions submitted in the survey that we can
actually,
reference?
That's a good question. I will take a quick look.
And I know some of you asked about the one pager. If you scan it with your phone, you should have access to it, but we will also follow up with all of the documents that you all can have and use with your students and your communities. So
yeah, and so some of the things I'm seeing here is tips and advice to continue to support students. So something we do try is, like, with every episode posted, we link resources that are relevant to that specific topic.
Yeah.
We also reshare resources every week on our Instagram and other social media platforms. The other thing I wanted to say about resources in general is that we also are trying to partner with other peer orgs. So some other organizations that might be helpful to be in contact with are Rise First or First Gen Empowerment. And we are continuing to build new relationships to collaborate and get content out there. I think another question is like advocacy and assistance for applicants outside of your school. I think that's a really tough question, but I'd love to connect with you offline about that. So just feel free to email us. We'd love to connect. But thank you all for your time. I think we have 2 more minutes and you may have another presentation soon. But thank you all again.
Yeah, thank you again. We'll be here in case anyone has any questions, but thanks again for attending. And we hope you have a great remainder of the SACAC conference. Thank you, everyone.
That was great, guys. Great information. Nice flow. You guys have a nice flow together. So
good.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. All right. Well, have a great rest of your day. And I will end this. And it's like I say, it has been recorded, so anyone can get this later.
Is there a way to save the chat? I forgot if you mentioned that.
Ooh, I don't know about that. I can ask real quick. Hold on a second.
Okay. Yeah, I think that'd be great. Otherwise, I'll do what I can to copy and paste everything. Okay.
That was perfect timing wise. That was good.
I think so. I think we still have some people on the call, but I appreciate everyone's diligence.
Chat will be saved with the recording. So
perfect.
Oh, perfect. Great.
Yeah. So you have everything. All right, guys. Well, you guys take care, and we'll talk to you soon.
You.
All right. Bye.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Bye, everyone.